The release of the Last Jedi trailer has whet plenty of appetites, but has also left us with plenty of questions. We're going to focus on each character and predict what we can expect from them in The Last Jedi based on the previous movies and this trailer. Today, we are looking at Luke Skywalker and theorising what lies ahead for him. Luke Skywalker has had a difficult life. His mother died during childbirth and he had an absentee father. His guardians, Uncle Ben and Aunt Beru, were killed by the Empire, after which Obi-Wan Kenobi looked after Luke and began to train him to use the Force. Obi-Wan was soon killed by Darth Vader as Luke watched on, and Luke's new Jedi Master, Yoda, died before Luke had completed his Jedi training. Luke then succeeded in turning Darth Vader away from the dark side, only to see him too die a few moments later. In later years, Luke's nephew turned against him while he was running a Jedi school, destroying everything and forcing Luke into a self-imposed exile. Given Luke's tough past, I'd hoped to see a powerful Jedi who would be inspiring and start to see the fruits of a lifetime devoted to being a Jedi despite his setbacks along the way. However, given how The Force Awakens finished, and having seen the continuity into this trailer, it's more likely we have a Luke Skywalker who has been broken somewhat by his past and burdened by his own experiences as well as the expectations of those who have now found him. In the final scene of The Force Awakens, Rey climbs the mountain to find Luke. The Resistance in the First Order spent the entire movie trying to find Luke's location because Luke had disappeared and had no desire to be found. He would only do this if he was disillusioned, so it is safe to assume he was bitter in isolation. When he turns to reveal himself to Rey, he does not have the look of a man who is happy to have company. In fact, he looks quite troubled in front of this young lady who has seemingly come to seek his aid. The Last Jedi trailer follows straight on from this scene. Despite any issues Luke is harbouring, he chooses to train Rey. During the training, Luke guides Rey to see the light, the darkness, and the balance. In the very first scene, I believe Rey has just had a vision under Luke's guidance, and her reaction is one of fear, or perhaps information overload. It could be a shared vision of Luke's, from a past event that has led Luke to his haunted isolation. Luke is plagued by the darkness he has seen, and will likely try to impart this knowledge of the dark side to Rey, but will ensure that Rey is not tempted by it, and that she should become the balance, which is in reference to what we hear next from Luke.
It's so much bigger.
Luke seems to be referring to the balance, which Rey has just said she saw. I think the balance could be an important part of Luke's story, and it could be where Luke wants to push Rey towards with his training. In this same visual shot we see Rey training with her lightsaber as Luke watches on. Luke is distant and on higher ground, and I can't help but wonder how symbolic that is. Is Luke on higher ground to symbolise his higher standing as a Jedi, with Rey lower and next to the statue? What is this statue? Could it be a monument Luke built of Darth Vader or perhaps even Anakin Skywalker? If so, could Rey being in the middle of Luke and Darth Vader be symbolic of the balance between light and dark that Luke is trying to push her towards? Perhaps. Also worth consideration is whether we will see Rey practice her lightsaber skills with Luke in a fight, or if the scene is typical of Luke training her while he watches on from afar. Fighting with Luke would be as good a practice as you could get, and would also help Luke keep his skills sharp. But does he want to be kept sharp? Does he have a desire to ever be involved again after all these years in isolation? Perhaps Luke wants to stay back and simply promote Rey as the balance rather than a Jedi, which leads us to his final quote.
It's time for the Jedi to end.
It is interesting that the filmmaker showed us Luke as he says, "to end." They wanted to make sure we knew that Luke said those words, and that it was not possibly anyone else. And the only reason Luke would say that is if he believes the way of the Jedi is broken. He has seen Ben Solo turn from Jedi, or at least Jedi in training, to the dark side, and knows his father did the same, so perhaps Luke believes that if there are no Jedi, there can be no Sith. Perhaps this is why he is talking of the balance and the end of the Jedi. This scene is likely to be when Ben Solo turns against Luke and destroys the Jedi Temple. Luke falls to his knees at the realization of what is happening and must be broken-hearted. Being shown here with R2-D2 matches up with Rey's flashback in The Force Awakens when we see Luke reach out to R2 while it rains ash. This was the last act in a long list of traumatic events which finally pushed Luke into self-imposed exile. Luke still sits firmly on the light side, as evidenced by his willingness to help Rey, but his past experiences haunt him to the point where perhaps he does not even trust Jedi anymore. He is a haunted man who has endured pain and suffering at almost every turn in life, and though he will train Rey and keep her from the darkness, he seems unlikely to be the inspiring and uplifting leader that perhaps many people are hoping for. Based on the evidence, I believe that Luke Skywalker will not be an all-powerful, all-inspiring Jedi leader in The Last Jedi.